Warning, this show is not for the serious or sensitive individual. I repeat, this show is not for the sensitive or serious individual.
In other words, if you sensitive, do you a favor, definitely do me a favor, and get the fuck from around here, player. Yeah, 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 yeah.
There goes the neighbor. There goes the neighborhood. There goes the neighbor. There goes the neighborhood.
Yes, y'all. Welcome y'all to another episode of There Goes the Neighborhood. I am Dom G. If you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe down below. Appreciate it. Today we start our second half of season 1. I am beyond words for season 1. Thank you for all your support. It's been amazing so far, and I plan for this to continue growing and growing and growing. Today we're taking a little tad back from the comedy routines and the jokes, which I'm sure we'll throw a couple in there here and there. But once again, I have Miss Natalie Bryant joining me today. She is a therapist among millions of other things. This lady has been with me since public school. We were kids when we started, and we first got to know each other. And, you know, she has went on to have an amazing career and do amazing things in life. And it is my honor to have her with me again to take on this topic that we're taking on today, which is about mental illness, which she has tons of knowledge on. I have knowledge, I would say mainly because of my crazy ass friends and family. But other than that, she's the professional at this. And I am the man of the people on this one. Natalie, thank you for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
How you doing? How's everything? How you been?
Everything is well. Thank you so much for having me on again. And, you know, just extending the audience and the capacity to have discussions about mental health. I know this is a fun forum with a lot of comedy and but the fact that you are injecting some serious conversations about mental health is important also. So I appreciate the platform.
No, I absolutely. You know, I've said it before where it's like through life, I've always gone joking, laughing, enjoying life to no matter what situation, in the worst situations, I've tried to make people laugh, smile. But I also had to understand that there's moments that you have to take on responsibility with certain issues. And this was one, you know, that again, when we spoke and we were actually thinking about topics and you kind of brought this up, I was kind of wondering how would I infuse this into a show that's mainly about sex and comedy, right? But it's at the same time, it has a lot to do with sexual relations and things of that nature that are important, because again, we're talking about couples, we're talking about people together, and I think these are some of the things that I have to touch on, and I will continue to touch on in the future with this show. I will never just, again, I'm learning to be a better man every day. So this is part of it. You know, not everything could be a damn joke like everyone tells me. So this is why we touch on this. All right, people, we are touching on mental illness. I happen to go the route where I wanted to discuss today because this kind of hit close to home, where there was an actual friend. We're not a close friend, but still a friend that happened to deal with a situation involving her sisters. Tragically, her sister was murdered by her boyfriend. Wow. And her elder sister that was there with her was defending her sister, obviously, and got murdered in the process.
Wow.
Very, very terrible. It's a terrible situation. From what I've heard, her sister really wanted to leave the boyfriend. But the boyfriend was uh, threatening all the time with suicide,
Mhm.
manipulating her to make
Yeah.
her feel bad and try to be there.
Mhm.
Um, the part was that he was never physically abusive to her,
Mhm.
which to me was a little surprising, but he was
Yeah.
never physically abusive. But there was, I guess, all the signs that a person
Yeah.
that can give you to see what he would have and obviously was capable of doing.
Absolutely.
Um, he murdered them and then he committed suicide
Yeah.
at the moment. So this was something that I wanted to touch on because I feel like I know there's a lot of people that are actually dealing with these kind of situations in their relations. I know sometimes you might hear your partner saying, I'll kill myself, and for
Yeah.
the most part, a lot of times people joke about that, which
Mhm.
you might have to think twice about joking with words. That's
Absolutely.
that's serious. So I wanted to touch on that really quick.
Mhm. Well,
Um,
I wanted to bring something to your attention. The last time
mhm,
we spoke about red flags.
yes,
And we spoke about red flags, but we didn't get to necessarily touch on this topic of red flags. But we did discuss some signs that you should be looking out for in relationship. And a lot of times people think that physical abuse is the primary sign, but emotional abuse starts way before the physical abuse starts. And
yes,
that is with the gaslighting, making you believe that you're crazy when they're doing things that are manipulative to you, manipulating conversations, threatening to harm themselves or others to keep you prisoner in the relationship. Also, financial abuse, holding that money, or even saying, "Hey, you're in charge of the money," but then spending all the money on their end anyway to place blame on you because you're supposed to be in charge of the money, even though the money has been spent by them,
mhm,
making you being the center of blame, the center of issue, the center of everything. I tell people it's hard in relationships sometimes if we've not learned
that's
about
right.
boundaries to set boundaries. And sometimes we have to learn to set boundaries and especially those non negotiables that we spoke about before. If you have a partner that feels like the consistent use of, I'm just going to kill myself to keep you in the relationship, that very first time that that statement is said, you either walk away or you make sure, absolutely, that you seriously let them know, like, listen, if you ever say that again, I'm done and I'm walking away, no matter what the consequence is. You show them very seriously that you are not taking it as a joke. You said earlier, this is not a joke, and it isn't. But a lot of times it has been used as tactic to keep both men and women trapped in situations that they really don't want to be in.
That is that's so. I mean, you know what, and which I really didn't look too much up involved in this, but I should have, as far as when it comes to couples that are together and have children, because I think
Mhm.
that sometimes makes it way more difficult, and
Way more difficult.
that's got to be a whole different, um, just a whole different animal. I mean, altogether.
But I
Um,
do want to say that having kids, it does change the dynamic of it, but that should even make you the more serious about your stand. Because a lot of times children are already aware of the manipulation, especially these children today. Like before, there was some things you can hide, some things you could be transparent about, some things that, but children are intuitive from the beginning. That's why even when you don't have to say something and you walk into a room and you're not feeling great, your child is going to say, "Hey, you okay? Are you feeling okay?" And they'll try to do something to make you feel better because intuitively they know something is wrong, but they don't know what's wrong. And their innate emotion is to help fix the circumstance. So children are very aware when situations are unhealthy and sometimes it's children giving you the indicator to say, mom, you deserve better than this. Or
mhm.
dad, that person doesn't mean you any good. Children then gives you the permission to say, okay, enough is enough, then I can time out. But if you're prolonging situations or staying in situations because of the children, it's just causing more of an unhealthy environment for them. And it's teaching them that you're supposed to stick it out. And now,
That it's
we're from
acceptable.
Brooklyn, we're from Brownsville. We've always talked about loyalty when it comes to New York and things like that. And
Right.
loyalty is okay, but not until the end that it's a detriment to you or your child.
Mhm.
You have to recognize when it's time to walk away.
I agree. I mean, again, like me in the spiritual place that I am now in my life, um, I'm all about energy, good energy, positive energy, and I think we need to pay more attention to that because I think everyone hears that, and you know, but don't take the steps needed in order to truly understand what that is. And a lot of the times it's stepping away from people you love most, and
Yeah.
we have to pay attention to that. Um, just to continue on that, I um I was reading, I did a little research on,
Mhm.
just in case there's any listeners right now in the moment that actually might be going through that.
Mhm.
And I took a little time to write down a few things, that few tips for people that might be in that situation, that might
Mhm.
have someone with serious mental illness that possibly is threatening to kill themselves if you leave them, or whatever the case might be.
Mhm.
There were a few steps which I thought were pretty, I mean, a lot of them obvious, a lot of them
Mhm.
you might want to think about. So it was how to break up with someone threatening with suicide.
Okay.
Number one was emphasizing,
Mhm.
show empathy. Um, you want to obviously let them know you care about them. You
Mhm.
want them to find help. There's obviously a way. You don't want to react nasty to them
Mhm.
and again trigger it that
Yeah.
much quicker. Um, which goes into number two, is avoid arguments.
Mhm.
Do not do not argue with that person. Again,
Or engage because their logic is not your logic. And if they feel like their life is, you know, optional, they may feel like your life is optional also. So
mhm,
engaging with them wouldn't be a healthy way to move forward. Now, I do want to preface this by saying if there is a crisis situation, regardless of anything, you need to call 911 and
yes,
get
that,
them engaged with the police so it is on record, and also to a mental health institution so they can help them get back to a place of regulation. Because if not, you are putting yourself in the place of being kind of like God, like you're determining whether you don't want that response. That's a heavy responsibility. And that's when people say, I'm going to kill myself, a lot of people get afraid and they stay. But that's not your burden to bear.
what I mean, how would you suggest? Say me
Hmm.
me and you are that couple, and I'm
Hmm.
the man threatening suicide,
Hmm.
and now I'm getting to a state of mind that I am arguing with you. I am
Hmm.
starting to have that kind of fight with you.
Hmm. Hmm.
What would you suggest for the woman? Because obviously, again, if they're saying avoid these argument, avoid that kind of interaction,
Hmm.
what is the step for you to? What's the next step for you to make?
Well, I mean, I think, trying to see if you can try to calm them down, let them know, hey, I don't want to argue with you, Dom. You know that I love you and have love for you, and we have been together how many amount of time? I just want to see you well and not in a space that hurting you or harming yourself will have you leave this earth because that's not what I want. Love for me, and this is just me, is about life and living it to the best of your ability. And you're not happy because if you were happy, you wouldn't be talking about taking your life. And so I have to first and foremost let you know that I would just tell them that I feel like you need help and I'm willing to sit here and wait with you throughout the whole process to get you help. And that for me would be holding their hands until the police gets there, going with them to the hospital, talking to the doctors, having that would be me. that may not be everyone else. And that's why this situation definitely can be subjective and objective. It's from a person's perspective. And that's why for me, always getting law enforcement involved helps to ease some of that burden off of you, that you're not calling the shot, and remembering that them taking their life has nothing to do with you yourself. That's them feeling like there's nothing left to live for. And that is something that we should reiterate. Now, saying all that to say this, there is a suicide hotline number, 1-800-273-TALK. It's a national number. And you can call them and speak to someone if you're feeling like you're suicidal or if you may need some help. But I would always say dial 911 first. Get the police involved, get them to a hospital.
Okay. So number 3 on that was also you avoid argument, but also maintain boundaries. And what they meant was, no wishy-washy. You have to stand firm on what you want to do. You can't start making them feel like maybe we have a chance, or no, you have to stay firm on that it's over, or whatever the case might be, which I agree 100%. But I do also understand how that can possibly be scary for and I have to, I guess, go back to what you just said. If you were at that point, then law enforcement should probably definitely be involved. If you're at that point that you're afraid to hold your stance on what it is that you're feeling. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. I feel like law enforcement should always be involved, but you can't be wishy-washy. That's why one of the first things I did say is setting that hard boundary, that like the absolute first time that is said to you, you either shut it down all the way, letting them know, like, if I ever hear you threaten that again, I'm immediately calling the police. That doesn't mean that doesn't take that out of their mind, but it lets them know, like, you're not into that manipulation type of tactic. You know what I mean? If you're already in the relationship and you've broken up already and they use that, let them know, listen, I care for you. We were in a relationship. That relationship is over. That doesn't mean that I don't care for you and your life and the people around you that we have met and engaged with. But when you say this, I'm calling 911 to make sure that you're not a harm to yourself or others. That you put me in the place of having that responsibility at this point because you shared with me that you're willing to hurt yourself.
And a lot. I mean, I know people that sometimes even just on social media that you'll read, oh, you know what, I should just kill myself, and you start to kind of see these tendencies in certain people where I think we become so numb to it because you're like, here he goes again, here she goes again with the same nonsense, right? And you start to take that, and now when you have to put that towards someone else that possibly is truly threatening and ready to go, we kind of just again become numb to it, and it's just like, so a big point for anyone that's listening, and if you have that kind of issue, maybe it's an anger issue that you deal with. It's the only way you can get that out. You get so frustrated, and these are the words that are coming out your mouth. Like, change that right now. Don't and for those that are on the other end of it, receiving it, you should never allow your partner to do that. That like Natalie just said, that has to be put to a stop. You have to let them know, you did it once. If I'm going to forgive you this once, I'll forgive you. You do it again, that's it. It's done.
And they can get mental health help. There are therapists and professionals out there that can help you work through your anger issues and find other ways to get the anger out, find other ways to self-regulate so that you're not going over the top. A key thing is we've parented how we are parented. So our parenting impacts how we parent our children and how we engage with the environment around us. We spoke about this last time with attachment. We are teaching our children, if they're watching us, that this is the way to deal with feelings appropriately or inappropriately. Is this something you want to see your children struggle with? How do you feel that this would impact the people that really love you? those are the real conversations that we should be having. But if you're not a professional, I would say the only thing, most of the time, people in that situation feel like they have no one. So if they feel like they have no one or that they're better off without being here because it hurts other people, so love on them and help them get the help that they need. A lot of times people don't really want to leave here, but they don't know any other way to express the overwhelm that they're feeling. However, there are ways to teach them how to cope better and change their language if they do the work. But that is not something that we just take on and be like, hey, we can handle it. Because
Mhm.
it's not necessarily true. And when you get yourself backed into a corner and don't know your way out of it, then you're stuck in a situation that you feel like you have to carry the burden of this person who consistently wants or threatens to kill themselves each day. That's a heavy burden to carry.
That I'm glad you touched on that as far as finding some type of therapy
Mhm.
for whatever the situation might be. Because I feel like we're in a society that people look at therapy as such a negative thing.
Mhm.
It's when the reality is that, I mean, I'm at a point in my life that I've got to see so many successful people that have their shit together, that are doing things that are just remarkable. These
Mhm.
same people are the same ones that are going for therapy. They go see a
Yes.
therapist once, twice a week, for whatever, whatever it might be. And I think, especially coming from where we come from,
Yeah.
right? I think therapy is, you go to therapy, you're crazy,
You're
you're a
crazy.
crazy person,
Yeah.
like, and I think that stigma needs to change. People got
Yes.
to start to understand that therapy is very healthy for so many things,
It is.
like, and it's not necessarily that you even have to go to a therapist. I mean, therapy can just be with a family member or a friend, because like there's so many different forms of it, but you have to seek it out. You have to
Yeah.
you have to be honest with yourself, number one. And I think that's probably the hardest part for most people is being truly honest within themselves to say, I need help with this. I need help with that.
Well, I
And
think when we come from the diaspora that we come from as people of color, I can speak as an African American person of color, you're a Latino person of color. So when you're looking at the people that come from the diaspora, we came into this country as a place in a
losing you.
place. Huh?
Oh, you were just breaking up a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was saying
That's
we
all right.
came into this place in this country as a place of servitude where weakness was something that you couldn't show.
Mhm.
So it didn't matter. So even after we've moved out of slavery, we've moved out of that mentality, it doesn't mean that we don't suffer from post-traumatic slave syndrome, where we
Mhm.
still feel like we need to bear the burdens of the world. We can handle it. We apply this unnecessary, unrealistic pressure to ourselves to be all these things. And when we're not successful, we have a nervous breakdown.
Mhm.
Therapists have to see therapists.
Mhm.
I have a therapist.
Mhm.
And therapy is a stigma in our community because it shows a sign of weakness. But if you have a heart attack, you're going to see a cardiologist.
Mhm.
If you have issues with brain, you're going to see a neurologist. If you have issues with pain, you're going to see a pain specialist.
If you
If you
have
have
problems with sex, you could come see Dom G.
if
No,
you have
man.
any issue, there is a specialist for it. If you're
Uh-huh.
having a hard time working through self regulations, feeling of overwhelmed, getting your mental health together, then see a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, a counselor. Learn some skills that can help you regulate in that capacity. A lot of times, also, if you need it, get on medication. There's such a stigma about mental health in our community when if our mental isn't right, our physical can't follow. A
Mhm.
lot of people who have depression can't get out of bed because they're mentally drained, they can't physically move, or they're in extensive pain because the depression has seeped into their central nervous system and has their neurons firing in their body. You know, if you really want to be holistically healthy, your mental health is just as important.
I I agree 100%. Again, you have to know what exactly it is that you need, or at least seek to find out what it is that you need. And that's the first step. It's just
Mhm.
trying, at least trying, right? Maybe you need some shrooms in your life. Like take a handful of shrooms and have a fucking trip, go to another dimension, and maybe you'll feel better. Maybe that'll fix you up. You know, they're actually trying to legalize that. They're saying there's
Actually,
a lot of benefits, and
right
well,
now they are working on mental health and psychedelics because they have
psychedelics, yeah.
seen quite an improvement with utilizing psychedelics with some therapeutic
Microdoses.
my
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
modalities. So I'm not saying that there aren't things there, but I don't want people to get the idea of using these
No,
coping mechanisms to feel good for right this second.
no,
Yet
exactly.
still, once the high is gone, they're still dealing with the same stuff because then that perpetuates abuse
Hmm.
and escapism. And that's not what we want. We want people to learn how to deal and cope so that they're able to build a foundation of, okay, I've been through that. I did this. I got over it. I've experienced that. So when things come up against them, they're not feeling overwhelmed and ready to shut down.
What I learned too, I've been watching a lot of science in these past few months, and they were talking about how, like, depression, trauma, certain things that we might have and not understand where it comes from. Maybe your mother and father was the greatest mom and dad you can possibly have, always full of energy and happy, but
Hmm.
yet you're depressed and down. And
Hmm.
they're saying that they're finding that this can get passed from a DNA. This can be your great great grandmother that suffered some type of traumatic experience that they don't know exactly how to point it out, but that can get passed through DNA, and maybe it affects you, which is something,
Absolutely.
I guess
Absolutely.
that'll be
Mental
something they'll.
health. Yeah, mental health is genetic. Mental health is genetic. That is the study of epigenetics.
Mhm.
And trauma is passed down. You know, trauma is passed down. Sometimes it doesn't have to be your children, but it could be your great grandchildren. If you struggle with a mental health issue, it can be passed to your nieces or your nephews. If it's in the DNA for it to populate somewhere, it does come through the genes. And that's why sometimes you have people in your family you just don't understand, like, where did this come from? It doesn't necessarily have to be mom or dad. It could be great granduncle. It could be grandpa or Uncle Joe. It just it just resonated in that particular child. So yes, there are many studies that show that um, we are that genetically attributes to mental health also.
Guess I'm gonna have to tell my son that his kids might end up crazy. Gotta let him know. Sorry, son.
Don't torture your son. Don't torture.
uh, so back to the list. We were at 3, which was to maintain boundaries.
Mhm.
Number 4 stated, um, which you already touched on. You have to remind them that their choices are their own.
Yes.
You can't allow them to put the blame on you.
Mhm.
Don't allow that to happen. You got to let them know
Yes.
you're going to kill yourself.
Mhm.
That's your choice. You're making
Yes.
that choice. Which I agree with 100%. Do not at all allow yourself to soak that energy in or feel like you're the blame and cause of anything to that degree. I don't care how terrible of a boyfriend or girlfriend you are,
Mhm.
that it should never be pushed to that limit. Um,
Absolutely.
and then number 5, um, which was the last part of it, was let them know that they are defined by more than their relationship. Which again, I guess it's just reiterating to them that they're important, that they're loved, that it's not just about our relationship. You're special to
Yeah.
your mother, you're special to your father, you're special to your kids, or whoever it might be.
Absolutely.
Um,
But a lot of people do get defined by the relationship dynamic that they are because we live in a society where Instagram models and personalities and those things, the show of it all is the most important thing as opposed to the real content of what's going on within the relationship. Is this person good to you? Does this person love you? Can this person meet your needs physically, emotionally, and mentally? Is this a healthy space for you? And a lot of times we never get to the healthy space part because we're looking at that fast and immediate thing of, oh, we're together. It's kismet. Have I've seen a whole relationship move through in like 3 months. Like I'm talking about from dating to married. And I'm like, whoa. And then they're divorced by 1 year. And you're like, wait, what happened? How did we get there? So like, wait, let's slow down.
I've also seen the other side of that too, though. The
Yeah.
ones
And
that
you know
actually
what?
lasted.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes they do make it because,
Mhm.
you know, they are that passionate about being with this person. But a lot of times the instantaneous doesn't always necessarily pan out well because they didn't take time to get to know the person. They didn't get to see them in all their ranges of feeling and emotions. They didn't really find out, you know, do we have the same values? Do we have the same, you know, the stuff that we want to make up for our own family to have? And by the time they recognize that that isn't right, they're like on their way out the door, involved with someone else, and then here comes divorce. I think that, you know, time is always your best friend. You know,
I,
you're going to see that person through
I
and
say
through
that all the
throughout
time.
time. Yeah, your
I
best
say that
friend.
all the time. Like I get that thrill of being head over heels, but you gotta
Hmm.
understand when you're head over heels, that those first few months you're with some, your energy is at a amazing level. Like no one could get you
Yes.
upset, no one can get you mad. Like you're looking forward to every day to be able to see that person go out there. Like remember, like this, if you're not seeing that person in the most amazing light, the greatest energy, then more than likely you're not going to see, you're going to start to see the
Hmm.
bad side, right? So you can't, don't jump so quickly with people because again, that you got to understand that beginning part. It's like what the I used to always say,
The
it's like,
honeymoon phase.
yeah, you know, I'm introducing you to my representative in the beginning, right?
Yes,
You're
yes.
that's not really me, and it's not that I'm trying to be a fake person.
Hmm.
You're just you're making me happy. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
super excited. So my energy level, the things I want to do, everything I want to do for you is going to be at a different level than, let's say, we're together a couple of years later down the road, right?
yes.
Obviously, our goal is to continue to try to have somewhat of that energy, but that's you're not going to have that, right? So
Yes.
those first few months, you're going to see the greatest moments of that person, and if you're seeing red flags, like we spoke about in the last episode, then that's something for you to say, if I could see him getting like this in this first month,
Hmm.
I might have to think about what he can become later on down the road.
Yeah.
She could become later down the road.
Or she's getting upset about this small thing, you know, like you always want to watch for those kind of red flag attitudes or whatever. And listen, everybody comes with their stuff. I don't want you to say like, oh, red flag, red flag, red flag.
No,
Everyone comes
yes,
with stuff.
yes.
No one is perfect,
Let me touch on that.
but you have to recognize what are my non-negotiables with that stuff, and is it something that I believe I can handle? If it's not something that you know you realistically can't handle, then you have to have an honest conversation. Like this really bothers me. I can't make you change, but I want to let you know how it affects me and see what their move is, see what their character tells them to do to either adjust it or modify it, or, you know, say if they say, hey, that is just me and there's nothing I can do about it, then you know where they stand and you make the choice of how you want to move forward. But you don't have another person make the decision for you about which way the relationship should go. Because if it's not
Mhm.
for you, it's just not for you. And you need
Yes.
to be aware that you have a choice in it's a relationship is because it's two or more people trying to come together to agree to be in this symbiotic relationship. So if it's not working for you, then you have to say, well, you know, I really like you, but there's just some things that I just know will bother me. And
Mhm.
I want to be in a healthy, happy, whole relationship. And this non-negotiable for me, I can't do it.
You got to be able to accept it. You got to be able to accept moving on without that person.
Mhm.
I mean, I think a lot of it obviously becomes being able to be comfortable and happy within your own self and being able to live. I never quite understood that. Like when people would when I would hear someone say, "Oh, you got to learn to be happy by yourself. You got to learn to be able to live." And I would always look at that as a term kind of, I always would look at that person like, you just can't keep a partner, or you're just a lonely person and you're trying to make yourself feel better. And it wasn't, till I grew up as a man. And when I say grew up as a man, I mean recently, because I was still a child. I would say maybe about 6 months ago. But now that I've grown, I truly understand that term. Like I understand the process of being able to be happy by yourself. Like
Mhm.
in life general, you have to truly love just being alone, like
Yeah.
being by yourself. And I get it now. I guess for me, I was always a people's person. So I was always out enjoying, making people
Mhm.
laugh, being able to be around whoever. And until recent, where now I spend a lot of time alone, or just me and my son. And I love the energy. I just love
Mhm.
the energy of that, and I get it. So I truly understand that, and I think people need to truly pay attention to that. Be able to be by yourself, because if you can't, and now you jump into a relationship with someone
Mhm.
that possibly has a mental illness, it's going to be tough for you to really truly pull yourself out of that, because again, you're not going to want to be by yourself, but at the same time, it might end up sticking around for all the wrong reasons with someone you don't want to be with.
And just
Just
like you said about suicide, that's also putting the burden of the other person to keep and make you happy. That's
hmm
not their job. Your job is to be happy, healthy, and whole. Their job is to be,
uh-oh, breaking up a little
their
bit.
job is
There you
not
go, you're
to make
back.
you happy. Oh, I'm sorry. Their job
Yeah,
is
you're
not
back.
to make you happy. Yeah,
Yes.
their job is not to make you happy. That is
hmm
your job. And
Yes.
I know that being
Can
in,
I cut you off on there, because I don't want to get. I
yes.
just thought that what you just said about their job is not to make you happy. I
Mhm.
think people have such a different way of thinking about that term,
Mhm.
because like I know for me, right? When a woman might tell me, "I don't need you to be happy. I don't need you to make me happy. Like I'm
Mhm.
going to be happy," right? We can get a little offended by that, where it's like,
Yes.
what do you mean? Like, excuse me, But so I think you have to understand when we make those kind of statements, right? That's not something that you should have to tell your partner, "I don't need you to make me happy," right? Because now you're kind of changing the
You're
meaning
making
of
it
it.
negative.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're turning it into a negative. So it's like what Natalie is saying, and just what I'm saying is, you know, yeah, that's not your partner's job, is not to make you happy. We
Yes.
tend to have grown up in a society where we feel like my partner's job is to love me, make me happy. Yes,
Mhm.
obvious, right?
Mhm.
That should be obvious. It's not something that should be even spoken of, because if you have to say that and bring that out, then something's wrong. Something's
Yes.
wrong right off the bat. You should know that. So I just wanted to clarify on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I just wanted people to know that um, you don't need that other person to make you
Mm-mm.
happy. And a lot of times when you're happy and you're whole and that shines through, but when
Mhm,
you're desperate and you're needy, that shines through too. So what
mhm,
you're trying to attract, you're really repelling instead of bringing closer to you, because people can see desperation. People can see,
mhm,
they can see needy. They can see, and that's not what you want to give off, And I'm sure everyone has a level of needing more in places here or there. That's the wonderful thing about relationships, where you're weak in some place, your partner may be strong and vice
right,
versa. So you support
mhm,
each other. But your partner should not be your God. Your partner should not be every single thing, because then
mhm,
when that partner does not live up to that pedestal, or that partner does not live up to that standard, then guess what? We're stuck in this tailspin of, what am I going to do? How do I fix this? I can't be without them. I need them to do this. And we're disappointed when they don't live up to that. And then we're broken.
100%, 100% on that. Um, the another thing. I'm getting back to the breaking up.
Hmm.
Um, it was, which is the most important, is keeping everyone safe,
Yes.
right? So they just said, take threats seriously, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, call 911 in those kind of situations, and don't worry about misunderstanding.
Yeah.
To clarify that, right? And I think that's a real big point because, again, we tend to become numb to those kind of situations, especially if you are one of those people that are continuously letting those kind of people into your life.
Hmm.
You just kind of, he's just, or she's just saying she's gonna kill himself, whatever, no, don't look into it as you're misreading. You call 911. You do what you have to do to secure yourself and secure the person that's making those threats and whoever else might be involved. That is so super duper important because I do believe it. I would love to see if there's any numbers out there on it, but I can probably say there's a good amount of people that have probably looked at it in that regards where they felt, I'm misreading it. I'm not going to call police, whatever. They're just venting or whatever the case was. And if they did, that probably could have prevented any serious
Yeah.
situations that came about from it. So that was two. And then it also said, alert the person's family and
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
Another important thing, which I think a lot of people are fearful of because I got to call your mom and let her know. Oh, Natalie's saying she's gonna do this. That could be very touchy and that could be tough
Yeah.
to do, but at the same time, it's very important to do.
It's important. They need to feel that support. If you're not going to be there, surround them with others, love them, and let them know, like, listen, this may have been a struggle for us for a little while, but I take these statements seriously. So I did what I felt I needed to do to not just protect myself, but to protect my partner or ex-partner because I still care and value how their life. And that's the most important thing. It's about saving their life if they're feeling this way. And if their family, I know most families would be happy to that someone intervened and let them know. Because a lot of times in relationships, couples keep things really private and they don't share things. But if there are indicators, I would always say, let a family member know, like a parent or sibling, like, hey, this has been said a couple of times. Have you ever heard them say this? Because it's concerning to me. You can, if you hear some things that are kind of red flags and you're like, are you sure everything is good? Have you ever heard them mention it in the past? I want to make sure that everything is safe. And that way you can know if this is something, and even in knowing, you're still going to call, but at least having that knowledge base and letting them know, like, hey, this has been said. That way at a later time, you can say, hey, I shared it with such and such and such and such, and let them know that these things were going on.
Mhm.
So they can be aware of if they do get a fateful call, like, okay, he's pushed or she's pushed the envelope to a point where we had to get, the police or the hospital involved.
Mhm. Yep, I agree. I agree 100%. And the last but not least is leads up to make sure if it becomes something that you see is a very, very serious threat, get to a safe place.
Yes.
Um, More importantly than anything, a lot of women, a lot of men live on their own.
Mhm.
You know, get a phone call, Tim coming over with threats.
Mhm.
Just get to a safe place, get away from the situation. And I know, and though, and I've heard a couple of situations which I know that makes it tough, and that's why I always tell people, especially when they're dating and it might be a new date,
Mhm.
you shouldn't bring everyone to your home,
Yeah.
because again, you never know, and
Yeah.
to women, especially women out there, men also, but especially for the women, never, never, never. If it's a new guy you're meeting or a woman you're meeting, do not, do not those first couple of dates give them any idea of where you live and things of that
Absolutely.
nature. Because there's a lot of sickos out here, and
Yes.
the last thing you want to do is especially if you have kids,
Yeah.
is have someone that can have these kind of mental illnesses know where you're living.
Mhm.
Um, because then you get really stuck in a hard
Yeah.
place.
safety is always first and key for both men and women, because I think the last time we spoke, there was just a situation where a man was killed by their
Mhm.
partner in
Yeah,
a
you was telling me.
domestic violence situation. So, men are in just the same scenario as women are.
Hmm.
And sometimes I think women can be a little bit more creatively crazy.
Yes.
But I want you to make sure that you're safe at all times, and try your best to vet the person that you're dating. I know that it can be difficult, but we live in an information age.
Hmm.
Indicators
Absolutely.
are out there, or if
Absolutely.
there's
Hmm.
an issue, and absolutely make sure you're safe. Start off with like group dating in the beginning if you need to, where you just catch up with friends and you have like a dinner date where it's multiple people. It doesn't have to always immediately be one on one until you kind of feel comfortable. But if you do like engage in one on one, definitely make sure you're meeting at a place, you're having your own money in your pocket in case of an emergency, that you're able to afford the situation if your partner decides or your date decides to get up and leave. You want to just always make sure that you secure yourself, and that way you can get yourself home safely. Always checking behind you, seeing if someone's following you, making sure if you need to have a safety device like an alarm, mace, or something like that, if you're in a dangerous area, so you can protect your person.
Yep, 100%. I read that 42% of all suicides are related to relationship problems, which I thought that was a very high
High
number.
number. Hmm.
That is a seriously high number. These are it's scary out there. Again, that's why, like I said, we're doing this episode now. It's just to bring a little more awareness and to let people know it's okay
Hmm.
to feel stuck, to feel afraid. But again, these are decisions in your life that you're making, and you have to stand up for yourself, for loved ones, whatever it might be. Because again, this is something that what I am happy about is that we are starting to see. I feel like we're starting to see a lot more attention being paid to
Yeah,
mental illness.
absolutely.
Whether with schools and and all every environment
Yeah.
that I've been from, Brooklyn to out here in Jersey.
Hmm.
I've seen all these neighborhoods that are truly paying a lot more attention to this, and that's good to see. I'm happy to see that, but that situation is always going to be there, and
Yeah. Well, love is an aphrodisiac. Like it
mhm,
feels good. You feel like you are on this high that nobody can bring you down on. So when you're loving and you're all the way in, it can be really hard when that person doesn't live up to those expectations. And
mhm,
sometimes in relationships, we don't look at the person that we have right in front of us. We look at the potential, and sometimes the reality of who we have in front of us and that potential are so far off. When we get disappointed, it's devastating. And that's why we want to recognize and remember that the person we are dating is human. They have faults and they are not perfect. And you're still getting to know them,
yep,
and they're
absolutely.
still getting to know you. So, give relationships time to develop so you can see if this is a person that you want to be with, truly, honestly, and openly. And if those red flags are coming up, to have
Uh-oh,
those safety
losing.
safety precautions. A website that NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, you can go on NAMI, which is www.nami.org, and they have a ton of information on different mental health disorders, having conversations about relationships and mental health, um, any type of mental illness journey, support groups, both online and in person in your community. And it is helpful so you can gain some insight as to what you're dealing with. There are people out there who are living healthy, happy, whole lives with mental health issues, that are on medication, that are happy, and that are okay. So I don't want you to think like, hey, someone with mental health issues can't be in a healthy relationship.
Hmm.
That's not true.
Yes, yes.
What is true, if a person in a relationship with mental health issues that are either untreated or they're not being consistent about their treatment and it is impacting their behavior, that is where there are major red flags. There are plenty of people with mental health issues that are doctors, nurses, any trade, any profession, and they are living wonderful lives. What we are talking about is when these situations have gotten out of control, that these people are threatening harm to themselves or others, or they're in an unhealthy space where they may be seeing or hearing, you know, having hallucinations, delusions of grandeur, things like that, because you have people out here who have been through traumatic situations that literally see and hear people that are no longer here. I've worked with soldiers from PTSD that see their battle buddies, you know, that have passed on after they've been blown up. I've worked with people who have been in traumatic car accidents that see their friends that passed away or hear them, you know. So when trauma happens, it does happen, you know, but that does not mean that people cannot live good lives. What we're saying is we want you to be aware of if there are some red flags to some issues and being empathetic to get your partner or dating person help or encourage them to. However, if they are using things like killing themselves or cutting themselves or harming themselves as a manipulative tool to keep you in that relationship, these are some things to help you try to diffuse the situation, get that person the help that they need, and place put the blame where it needs to be placed in the responsible hands of the person that is stating that they are doing this. It has nothing to do with you. And we just want people to be aware that, listen, things happen, but it doesn't have to be the end all be all. Let's talk through it if we can. If not, let's call 911 and get the professionals.
100% accurate. And I would say, you know, like I said earlier about I've been watching so many scientific shows out there right now, and just, you know, what fascinates me is the possibilities of what we can end up seeing within our lifetime. And it was one that spoke about how they're working on an electronic device that can possibly hear spirits, that can possibly be able to contact. And you know, there's things of that nature. I know that's kind of extreme,
Mm-hmm.
but my point was that we as human beings, we are so clueless of what truly is out there in the universe, right? That you shouldn't feel like this is for like people that possibly, because you mentioned about the guys with the PTSD that heard, you know, soldiers, that things of that nature. And I'm one that truly believes that our consciousness, which is being studied so much now more than ever, there's possibilities that you don't have to feel like maybe you're just losing your mind and crazy. If you happen to hear a voice, or you happen to hear or feel or sense something, you know, maybe that is a true feeling. Maybe that is a true spirit vibe. Like, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
So my point is, for those people, you know, if you're one of them and now feel like you're breaking down, trust me, you can find therapy for that. You can find a therapist that can probably set you up somewhere where you can actually maybe go see a doctor that specializes in these kind of issues.
Absolutely.
And you might sense that, you know what, maybe I do have some type of
Yeah.
some type of special ability. Who knows?
We have a group called Clinicians of Color, and it's a conglomerate of all different types of therapists and mental health providers. I have mental health providers that they do yoga and Reiki in their office. I have mental health providers that go on treks out or running with you know, there are providers out there that really hone into these niches of services for their particular person, and can help them through some regulation things that really help them break through where others may not have, because they have found a niche and a group of people that have needed therapy. They have aqua therapy, they have, therapy where you can go out on horses, they have equine therapy. I mean, it's so many different options out there to help people work through what they're going through. And I just don't want you to limit yourself, like Dom is saying, because there are so many practitioners out there that do so many other things. I have practitioners who work with the sound bells and drums, practitioners who work, if they're spiritual, Africanistic, they have Yoruban practitioners that deal with spirituality. There are practitioners out there that do and niche down to a lot of different things. You just have to find what works for you.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Because like I said, I've been big into meditation, and I'm like just touching the surface, and
Mhm.
I'm truly like looking forward to continuing to really get into that zone where I can really clear my mind when I
Yeah,
meditate, and I do believe that power of consciousness is something that we're going to see a lot more coming out
absolutely.
in the very near future
Mhm.
also. Just want to read a couple of statistics that I have
Okay.
wrote down for people out there to understand. Globally, 800,000 people die by suicide a year.
Yeah.
That averages one every 40 seconds. So this isn't just an American problem. This isn't, this is all over the world in every country. This is an issue. It's not your fault. Again, it's genetics, genes, and it just is what it is. But you have to understand that every day, 130 Americans commit suicide. That's one suicide every 11 minutes.
Yeah.
285,000 people each year become suicide survivors.
Yeah.
Um, which that's, and they also said one in every 25. Oh, there's one death in every 25 suicide attempts, which I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty nuts. If I was joking right now, I would say people don't even know how to kill themselves out there. But that's
Oh, boy.
no, I'm joking. joking. I'm joking. But the one statistic that really messed me up a little bit, but it makes sense because I guess we do live in a world where we have to be honest and admit that women are a lot smarter than us men.
Oh, boy.
But they said men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
but females are more likely to have suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
I said, wow,
Hmm.
that hit home, and that's why I said I guess women just are a lot smaller than us men because you can think about it and say, oh, that's stupid, I ain't gonna do it. But
And
us men
crazily
with it,
enough, the LGBTQ population, I believe, is 10 times more likely. And if you're
yes.
looking at the transsexual, the trans population, I think is 25%.
Mhm. Yeah, I did
The
write that down. I
percentages
saw that was
are staggering
way more
when you're
likely.
looking into, yeah, marginalized communities. So absolutely, those statistics are spot on. Like suicidal ideation is something that is very regular in a lot of communities and populations. There are people who have thoughts but may not have a plan or intent, and
Mhm.
there are people who make the attempt and are not successful. And they deal with the stressors of that because people think the build up to the suicide attempt and making the attempt is is jarring in itself. But for a lot of those survivors of that attempt, because they didn't complete it, is another blow to their. So that's a whole different dynamic of trauma and mental health issues that they have to work themselves, and the people around them as survivors of that attempt. It makes people become nervous, like you
Mhm.
can't handle things, and you know it's a whole dynamic. It's a whole dynamic. So it's,
Yep.
a lot of times people think committing suicide and taking themselves out the equation just affects them, but it doesn't. It affects every single person that's around them
So
that
broad.
loves them, and that adds on. So
Mhm.
suicide
gotta
is a
think about.
major topic. Yeah.
Things you have to think about. Another statistic that really kind of blew my mind was that they said the rates of males that are over 75 are the ones that are the highest in suicides, which that really blew my mind. I said, wow.
Because
You
a lot
know,
of times people don't realize that when you're in that age, you're reflecting on life, on the things that you could have, should have,
makes
and
sense.
would have done had things been different. And so when you're in the space where you may have to, at this time, depend on others to care for you, be in a home of some sort and not in your own home, not be in control of your own finances and the way you want to live or spend, taking that type of individuality and freedom from a person can be traumatic also.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, Nat, I want to thank you again for coming on. Once again, I want to leave you, everyone at home. I want to give you guys that number again. It's 1-800-273-8255. Write down that number. Keep that number. Make sure it's somewhere handy at all times. You never know who might need it. You never know if you might need it. Very important. Again, that number is 1-800-273-8255, and that is the suicide hotline.
Yeah.
So just again, thank you all. Natalie, thank you so much for this. This was awesome again.
You're welcome.
And we'll do it again. We'll touch on another tough topic, and we'll bring it to life for the people. I appreciate you so much. Continue to do all the amazing work you're doing out there, and just keep it yeah. You know how that goes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Please continue to support, and this episode especially, pass this on, have people tune in, have people watch this. You never know who can actually use this in their life, and you might know someone that can. So pass this along. Thank you for joining us. There goes the neighborhood. Yeah. And we're out of here. Peace.
Yeah.
There goes the neighbor. There goes the neighborhood. There goes the neighbor. There goes the neighborhood.